Okay, so again, you're at the at-risk training. So if you're here, then you conduct at-risk. We're mostly going to go over this manual right here. If you in the mail, so if you're brand new, I actually have a poll. Let me ask this poll. This helps me out. And I didn't even ask. Do we have anybody on here that is, hold on, let me ask. Oh, it's not going to let me. Okay. It's going to take too much time. I have a little poll, so if you guys do not mind taking it, I'm curious to know like what your entity is. It helps me out. If do you only do at risk? Are you also a daycare center that does at risk? Or so those are the options. Either you're a daycare center. Okay, we say a nonprofit. And then do we have anybody, and you can put yes in the chat or thumbs up or however, do we have anybody that's new to at risk? Like you've never done at risk, this is kind of the first time you're learning about it, hearing about it. Okay, perfect. That's usually one of my questions is if there's anybody new, so I kind of know where to go. So we have really, only have, can some more people answer? Okay. Well, we got about half. So most of you are a nonprofit, at-risk nonprofit, and then a daycare center. And then we have mostly a director, owner, or food service director. So perfect. That just kind of gives me an idea of who my audience is today. So this is just going to go mostly over this manual right here. So if you are new, you may not have received this manual yet. We will send it to you once you are approved on the program. But if you want this now, you can get a copy of it. It is broken up into sections, or there is a link. It's not that thick. This is really, I think, if I remember right, 80 some pages. But the reason we have to break it, yeah, it's 85 pages. The reason we have to break it apart is because it's so colorful. It takes up a lot of memory. So it won't let us upload the whole document. We had to do it in pieces, or we do have a link that you can click on and you can save it. It's a PDF, or you can print it out that way. It's the whole document. We keep that in our resource library. So again, I'm going to show you how to get to the resource library. All that stuff you can have access to now if you would like. I do believe I haven't been sending this stuff out. Like I said, I've been here, but it's just been with Christmas and then kind of everybody out. It's been kind of a weird, and I'm working on other projects. So excuse me, I'm a little bit out of it, but Sherry should have sent an email yesterday. And she sent it to it's in the business maintenance page, and it's the slides. And it's also, I think it's the link to this book. And it's in the handouts. We have the slides and the handouts. Again, if you did not get that, I'll show you where to go because you will always have access to that. So we're going to go over this book right here, but then also we call our at-risk manual. We keep all of our blanks in there. It's also breaks this down quite a bit. And then it's a lot of our other kind of daycare side, not daycare, this is everything that's in that book, that's in this manual. And this is what it looks like right here. We send one of those out every year. What used to happen was we had one big manual. It had about 400 pages, but it was for adult daycares, daycare centers, at risk, multi-sided. It was everything compiled. And for years, people would just get confused. And honestly, it was a waste of money of printing because we may print out 400 pages and send it to you, but you only needed 200 of those pages. So we would tell you to throw it away so you don't get confused. So this year we have an at-risk only manual, and you'll get that as well when you're new. When you get it you'll get it with this. But again, I will show you where it's at, so you can go out there and download it, or you can just go out there and at least look at it. It is also in a PDF. So if we have a couple that have been on for a little bit, you are always contact us anytime you have questions, even now when you're not on the program versus even when you are on the program. Now we do come out and do a review, or we call it like an audit/review. And the person that does it is your child nutrition specialist. Now, if you've been on the program or if you've been on any other programs, we used to be called consultants. We changed the name last month because we're not really a consultant. We never have been. It's just something that we called ourselves. Our true, at the time, title was administrative coordinator, but if we would have said that, again, it doesn't mean anything. The whole State Department is trying to get people's titles more of what they actually do. So we now refer them to child nutrition program specialist. which you'll hear us sometimes say consultant. We're so used to saying that. But again, if we maybe refer to them as program specialist or just a specialist. Now, these specialists are listed on page A6, and that A-6 that refers to that the manual that I was showing you that we send out every year, not this one, but our actually training manual. And they are listed by county because that's how they are arranged, is by county. There are 6 consultants. So there's 4 consultants in Oklahoma County, 2 in Comanche, and 2 in Tulsa. So you may not know who your consultant is, but if you're in any other county, if you have not been assigned a specialist yet, it will be there. That is the person that will be conducting your reviews. It has their email address and phone number, and that phone is a cell phone number, so you can also text them. I know when I was in the field, I told people the best way to contact me, or the fastest way I can respond, is if by text or email. So, but every consultant's just a little bit different. You can always contact them for any assistance that you might need. We have what we call technical assistance, and technical assistance is if you're like, hey, I have the paperwork, can you come out here and show me how to do this? Now, I will tell you, since we have some new people on here, if you haven't been approved yet, this is how I'll tell you how the process works. I forgot I added a slide to that to make it a little more helpful. You can also contact us here at the state agency. That 405 needs to come down here with that number. Now, again, the things that I'm going to go over today, mostly it's your program specialist is the one that's going to know all that information. A lot of the state office people are the ones that handle your application and agreement. They handle your claims. They handle that kind of aspects. Now, at the very bottom, you see email address. If they work for the State Department of Education, you can email them. It's their first name dot last name at sde.ok.gov. My name is Kendra Mervelt. I'm the Director of Training. You can contact me again if you want to email me. It's just my first name dot middle name. And you may see a little box of me on video, and that's my name right there. If I'm a big box, there is a way that you can make it little so you can see the screen. I'll be pointing over here. I have 2 screens that I'm working with. So one that it's what you're seeing on your screen, which I'll sometimes point to, but this right here is all you have to do to email any of us. And you can also just Google like child nutrition program in Oklahoma, and it will pull up us from the State Department website that you can pull up any of our names. Now, so we are a federal program. So our federal fiscal year is October 1st to September 30th. So that's when we do renewals. So when you come on the program and want to renew your application, you need it to be renewed. We start doing that process in the September timeframe, but our new fiscal year is October 1 to September 30th. Now, in the application and agreement, you have to fill out a VC, or you have to fill out your budget. And then when we also come out to do review, we look at your VCA, your financial viability information. And that is all based on your fiscal year of your organization or your center. So just kind of an FYI, when we ask for that information on your budget or any profit loss, which I'll talk about what that is. And again, it's based on your fiscal year, not our fiscal year. Because sometimes that would be way confusing if your fiscal year is January to December, and then you're having to break up information for October to September 30th. We will not have you do that. We'll go based on your information. This is the website I was referring to. If you want to go to our resource library and get information like this, or get our training manual. We also have interactive forums out there. And we also have the food buying guide, which I'll talk about. No, I don't talk about it in this one. It's in our meal patterns. And I also do a separate food buying guide training. And then any slides and handouts. All of that is located in the resource library. We give you the manual and we give you this information, but we keep so much more stuff out here. Also, this is the website that you go to fill out your application and agreement. It's also where you go in to log in to the training calendar to sign up for these courses, and then also where you have access to claims. The resource library, you do not have to log into to have access to that. Only the application, training calendar, and claims are the only things that you do have to actually have a username and log in. Okay, so the online application and agreement, you need to make sure you update it as anything changes. So once you're approved, if there's anything that needs to be changed, it needs to be updated in that application and agreement. Now, there's several reasons for this. When we come out to do a review, we're going based on the information that is in your application and agreement. If you change it, then we may show up at the wrong time to do a meal observation, or we're talking to the wrong people because the director's no longer there. There's so many things that can happen. And it would also be a finding on the review, as one of the questions is your application agreement always up to date? It's going to play a bigger role even going forward, but people are really bad. They just change it. Actually, sometimes they would let it roll forward and not change anything. But once there are any changes, you do need to make sure your application and agreement is updated. It's very, very important. So as you know, we're going kind of through renewals right now. A lot of you are finishing that process up of the renewal application. So every year you renew your application. So the month that you submit you originally submit your application is the month that we're going to pay you. So say that you are working on your application and you have not maybe you submitted it in December for the first time. Then that means we will pay you for December forward. We can't backdate to November or October. We have a deal in our system that shows us when you originally submit it. So even though we need other documentation for you, it's okay. Even so, say you submit it in October, but we need more changes. We need other things to make it, to approve it. And we don't finally approve it to December, but because you originally submitted it in October, we can allow you to claim for October. But if you originally submit it other than October, then we cannot allow you, we cannot pay any claim previously to when you originally submitted that application. Now we have some new ones on here. So if you are new, this is how it works. So once your application is approved, you just can't automatically start claiming it. What happens is once your application is approved, we send an approval box to your program specialist. Your program specialist has 30 days to come out and do an approval visit. And at that time, when they do the approval visit, that's when they state you can start or stop. So this is kind of how we run here in the Department in Child Nutrition. And there's reasons why we do this. The programs in general, all of our child nutrition programs are very large. And people don't understand, especially on the CACFP side, all that is entailed with at risk, with being a daycare. They don't understand it. So what we do is you're required to go to training. So we give you the basis. You're going to leave here, and if this is the first time you're hearing anything about child nutrition, you're going to be very overwhelmed and you're going to forget half of what I said. So that's why when your program specialist comes out, they're going to go over this with you again. And then what will happen is then you can start doing the paperwork. And then what will happen is they'll come back the next month to help you do your first claim. So we try to do it in increments because we just don't want to set you up to fail. We really want to set you up to succeed and really understand the program, because with this program, we can take money back if things aren't done correctly. And if things get really bad, then we can terminate. And we want to set you up on the right foot to get with the program. So in the manual, in the at-risk training manual that we will give you, we do have some forms in there so that we're not in there last year. And we do need these forms if after we approve your application and you do need to change something, there are some things that we have to have a form for. And one of those is if you have any meal service, it's called a meal service change form. It's if you change your meal times, if maybe you need to change the number of meals that you're serving, anything like that. Maybe you're adding a meal, maybe you're erasing a meal service, we need to have that form. If you're going to add or remove a site, meaning you want multiple eating sites, then we have to have a form for that as well. And then this one is only in the resource library, but it's called the Certificate of Authority. And this is if you have anybody that you want to have a username and password to get into. So like if they want to sign up for trainings, maybe you want them to have access to just the application or even the claim system, we have to have a certificate of authority in order to add somebody to be a user, to have a username and log into our system. Now, it may look familiar to some of you, but this is the website that I was referring to. So this is where you go to fill out the application. This is where you can go to enter your claims. And then once you log in, you can do the training calendar. But this is where the resource library is. And again, you can see that red arrow and it says resource library. You do not have to log in to have access to this. Now, as you can see here, we have a whole section for at risk. And see right here has part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6. It's this manual. This manual is from 2017. USDA has not updated it yet. But again, we do have it to where I think it's in a Word document. It talks about the at-risk meal guide link, and you can just open that up and copy and paste the link into your browser. And sometimes you can click on it and it will pull it up for you. But right here, you'll see it has training slides. We have a section in here called training slides and handouts. If you go there, that's where we keep every single training that we have. That's where we keep the slides and handouts. So we don't keep it really with at-risk anymore. We just want people to see what trainings we do have available. So you can go out there for the handouts and the slides if you would like them. So once you log in, just some information about our system. So once you log in, you can go to the business maintenance page. Now on the business maintenance page, you will see right here in this blue banner, it says owner, executive director, and superintendent. That's where this person will be listed here. Everybody down here are just authorized reps. You are allowed to edit this. Anybody, if they're new, if you have a new owner, executive director, or superintendent, it needs to go to our office. But anybody down here, I'm not for sure, you can't really add, but I think you can delete and you can edit their information. It may let you add, I can't, honestly, I cannot remember. This is a brand new change as a couple months ago. But these people, like I said, they can have access to your claims. Maybe they don't have access to anything, but just to go to the training calendar. So that's where this information is right here. You can have as many authorized reps as you would like. Now, if you scroll down further to that page, when we're talking about your fiscal year, right here in this blue box, it says institution's fiscal year. You can make this, you need to make it what your fiscal year is. I told you what the federal fiscal year is, but we need this to show your information. And then right here in this purple, what's circled is, it says assigned field staff. That is your program specialist. And it says assigned office staff. This person right here would be the person that handles your online app. They're the ones that approve your application and agreement. And right now we have some people kind of helping, but that's the person that you can call to like any of the changes. So if you make a change to your application, when you update it like you're supposed to, you can contact your office staff and say, hey, listen, I updated something. Can you please go in and approve it? Now we have 3 office staff. So it could be either Jennifer Pryor, Lisa King, or Karen Davis. Now the field staff, that's the one that's in the book. We called them our program specialists, and this is the one doing your review. Now, if you go out there right now and it says Cassie Riddell, then that means that you're new and you're not approved yet. And once you are approved, she will assign you an office person and a field staff. But she's the one that works on them until they are approved. And then right underneath that is we do not send out certificates. So when you go to training, you have to go to the training calendar and log in. You log in, go to the training calendar and register. And once you register, this will show up down here. And then once you've completed the course, it will say attended with a check mark. We do tell people to give us about a week, but our trainings have been really small and we don't have an exorbitant amount right now. So Sherry is the one that she handles that end of it. So a lot of times, like the training today, this is the only training I have. I have very few people. You can type in the chat, by the way, or you can unmute. It's whatever you choose to do. She'll probably have this up tomorrow, even possibly this afternoon. She just has to wait for Zoom to populate the information that we need. So again, this is all on the business maintenance page. Everything you can go straight down. Just one other thing that we want to kind of mark your attention to is in the application agreement, when you're going through the checklist and filling out the application, this may be old, it was number 7, it may be number 8 now since we added BCA, but this is the state agency and institution agreement. This is what you're agreeing to be on the program. And a lot of people, they'll go in here, they'll scroll to the bottom, hit next page, scroll to the bottom, put in the date and hit submit. I would really suggest that you print this document out. It's 21, the last I saw it was 21 pages. again, it's what you're saying that you will and will not do, because a lot of times I'll be like, well, I didn't know about that. Where does it say that? It probably says it in here. Like the first thing in here says to be financially viable, administratively capable, and effect internal controls to ensure program accountability. That's always been in there. So there's some things that we're looking at more now because we're supposed to, and we had kind of had a plan with USDA to get everything that we need to, but because we've always looked at financial viability, but we weren't doing as good of a job as we needed to be, and so we had what we call an ME. We get audited by state auditors and by USDA. So we had to have a plan in action for USDA in order to meet the criteria of what we should have been doing, looking at more of as a state agency. So we talk about the budget. The budget is really important. And again, this is stuff that we should have always been kind of looking at, but we're looking at it a lot closer now than we have in the past. So it is required if you're on CACFP that you have to submit a budget, and you do this in your application and agreement. Again, a budget is just what you're projecting for the year, and it is based off of your fiscal year. It does need to be updated as needed to reflect what is actually going on at your center. So let's just say at the beginning of the year, you put $10,000 is what you're spending on food and milk. But we've had inflation, and it seems to keep going up and up and up. And maybe your food costs instead of $10,000 end up being closer to $15,000. You really do need to go in and update your budget. Eventually, there's going to be stuff that we're going to need from you in order to validate your budget at the end of the year. But we're not doing that right now. Once we know more, we'll send out information. But if your budget's not correct, we won't be able to approve next year's application. So anything, when you show us your financial viability stuff, really your budget and stuff should go along with that. And we do expect people to have to make changes to your budget. Your budget's always a working document. If you do not know how to fill out the budget or just how to fill out the application in general, Cassie does as a CACFP application training every month. We also have a link. It's under general and financial section of the resource library. We put it in 2 areas to make it easier to find, but it is a YouTube video of how to fill out the budget and the VCA. So when we approve the budget, all expenses approved in child nutrition will be listed in this last column of the budget. It goes institution, then it has CACFP portion, and then CMP improved. Documentation may be required to approve certain expenses. It's nothing uncommon. It's just like, you may say, I've asked for documentation before. Maybe I feel something, you're spending way too much on something, and I'm just validating it based on information that you have. But there are certain things, like if you want to spend CACFP funds on travel, let's say you're traveling for a CACFP conference, maybe for training materials, or you want to do advertising for CACFP, we will ask for documentation of how you came up with the dollar amount and like what you're spending the CACFP funds on. So labor, even if you are not charging any labor off to CACFP, it still needs to be listed in the institution of section of the budget. So that the whole budget also looks at if you're financially viable or not. So we have to see what you're spending as a whole, because we have to make sure that you're financially viable. And if you don't list this stuff in there, then it says that you basically have no labor, because we need to see what your organization is doing as a whole. So even if you're not charging anything off the CACFP, and I'm going to talk more about how it works here later on, because people are like, oh, you pay us for labor. I'm going to explain how all that works when we get a little bit closer to, when we talk more about the paperwork aspect, I'll talk about that. So now we're going to start talking about the basic responsibilities of at-risk. And again, in that A number in that little blue box, that's referring to our training manual. It is in our at-risk training manual. This is the at-risk guidance from USDA. And again, if you see anything that says A, that is in our at-risk manual. So I mentioned to you that we get audited by USDA, but we also get audited by state auditors. And a lot of times the state auditors are a lot more pickier than USDA. So with that being said, one thing that they did last year was with state auditors is they told us that anytime we come out to do a review, that we are required to get a copy of every single piece of documentation that we look at when we come to the center. Now, it doesn't have to be like actually physically copied into hard copies. You can scan it and send it to us as well. But anything that we look at for a review, the state auditors believe that we should be able to recreate the review if we want to. I mean, not want to, but they feel we need to recreate the review at our desk. So this is not something that is coming from us or from USDA. But if you don't do this, we get written up by the auditors again. And so it's something that you have to comply with. We are going to ask for copies of everything. Again, you can make hard copies or you can scan it, or work with your program specialist because maybe they can scan it for you, depending on, but so just kind of wanted to give you a warning on that. Integrity. So all of the reviews that we do unannounced. So what happens is once you get approved to come onto the program and the consultant comes out and does your first review, they have to come out within the first 6 months to year to do a full review on you. Again, we do this in kind of chunks because we don't want you to be on for like 3 years and then we come out and the program's kind of a mess, and then you're having to, but that's the only thing that you've learned. You learned it to do it this way and you've been doing it for 3 years. So we want to come in as soon as we can to do a review because we do want to get you on the right track. Again, they are unannounced. But what we do have is in that training manual, we have what we call a notification letter. And in that notification letter, it tells you what we look at for the review. It tells you all the information. I know Cassie emailed one out to everybody this year. But if you're new and you're not on the email list yet, that's where you can find the notification letter. And then when we do come out, all of your records need to be readily available for review at all times. So say that you're gone and somebody else is there, they should be able to get the paperwork. Now, if you do have a program specialist or if you haven't gotten it yet, if you do know that you're going to be gone, we really don't want to come out. I mean, honestly, we prefer not to come out if you're not going to be there because you're the person we really need to talk to the most, if you're the person in charge of the program. So if you do know that you're going to be gone, maybe you're having surgery at the end of the month, just email your program specialist and be like, hey, I'm out for surgery or I'm going to be gone, and then tell them the dates that you're not going to be there. Because we won't come, most of the time, unless we absolutely have to, and there's only certain situations that we would have to come out at the time that we come out is maybe if we get a complaint, but we would probably try to rearrange our schedule. If you were up for review, we would probably rearrange that to come at a time when you are there. But if you do not email your program specialist, they won't know that you're not there. And so if they show up, they're going to be wanting to do the review. Okay, so again, this is, again, still talking about this manual right here, but we're going to talk about the financial management section. Now, we used to have an index in the back of this book, but because we switched it up and we had one manual and we turned it into 3, and I say a half because we did do a section if you're multi-sided. So we do have the table of contents is pretty detailed, but also here it tells you, it starts on the section that the financial management information is at. So again, since we do have some new ones on here, all institutions participating in our program need to be what we call VCA, and that is financially viable, capable, and accountable. So what financially viable means is that you do not need our funds to operate. The sole purpose of our program is to give you money so you can provide more nutritious meals or food items that kids may not have access to. And it's happened, I've been on staff enough that it has happened that the government couldn't pay a claim or two, but if there are any interruptions in pay, it should have no effect at all on you still being able to feed kids. You have to be capable, you have to have adequate staffing, you have to be able to manage and to be able to stay in compliance with this program. And you also have to have accountability. You have to have program oversight. You have to be able to do the record keeping, training, monitoring if needed, and to make sure that all the costs are authorized for this program. As long as you are on child nutrition CACFP, we will continually monitor VCA. So if you are new, you had a 12-page document you had to fill out, and you have to send in supporting documentation. We did add VCA this year to the application. You did, so if you did, you may have to fill out on both sides, but the reason for the paper form, we do that if you were SD, what's called seriously deficient. So if you're seriously deficient, what that means is you had a review and the review didn't go great and you had a lot of errors. And so you were called what we call seriously deficient, and you are required to fill out the paper document as well as if you are new. And again, you have to send in a supporting documentation for it. Now, the questions are also in the application. This is the first year for us putting them in, but in the application right now, we are not asking for supporting documentation. And again, I talked about what the definition of financial viability was. Again, you do not need our funds to operate. You can feed children without our money. Because again, the purpose of the program is just to provide better food. So when we do come out and we do a review, and then we're going to eventually need this also in the office, but we just want to kind of draw your attention to what we need is we will need documentation showing us that you are financially viable. So it's something over your entire facility or your entire entity. Now, some of you may be with the church. Maybe you're affiliated with a hospital. Maybe you are affiliated with an Air Force base or an Army base. Now, we're not going to ask to see the entire Army base's information or the hospital or the church. We're going to ask to see CACFP information. But if you are like a daycare center, or if you're a nonprofit and you're not other entity, you're not like affiliated with something else like a church or a hospital, then we're going to have to see your documentation for your entire organization. We have to make sure you're financially viable. We ask this when we come out to the review. And again, it's going to be based on your fiscal year. We'll take the last thing that you have. We either need a year-to-date report, we can have a revenue expenditure report. Maybe you use QuickBooks. QuickBooks can pull us a report. Maybe you use an accountant, or any other documentation that you use to close out your books is what we need. Now, we will need this in any, so say if you have an accountant, maybe your accountant gives you something once a year. We'll take the last thing that they gave you. Maybe your accountant gives you something quarterly. We'll take whatever you have the last quarter. But we just want to let you know what we will be needing when we come out, so someone will know how to get it, or to know we're not expecting it the day we get out there, but you do need to be aware we do need this when we come out to do a review. Now, again, the documentation needs to be over the total revenue and expenditure for your entire institution or your entity or your center. And then when we come out to do the review, we need to see all bank and credit card statements of accounts where any CACFP funds are deposited or transferred to. So we have to make sure that all child nutrition dollars are spent and used appropriately. So anywhere that you have CACFP funds, we have to have access to that account. Eligibility. So this is going to start where we talk about this book right here is eligibility for at risk. So to be eligible to participate in the at-risk program, you have to be organized primarily to care for children in an after-school setting. So this can be like on weekends or holidays or during school vacations. So we're talking like spring break, fall break, Christmas break, any of those times. But you can only operate during the school year. So say where you're feeding, like for instance, say I have an eating site and my eating site is here at the State Department of Education. I am in Oklahoma City School District. So I can only serve meals when Oklahoma City School District during that calendar year. So say Oklahoma City Public Schools starts August 15th. The last day of school is May 15th. I can serve meals from August 15th to May 15th. I cannot offer meals May 16th because Oklahoma City Public Schools is out for break. And that is the location where my eating site is located. Now, you do have to be an after-school program, but you also have to have an educational or enrichment activity. And then you must be located in an attendance area where at least 50% of the students are eligible for free or reduced price meals. Now, this is waived right now due to COVID, but once the pandemic, they consider the pandemic over. Right now, there is not this requirement, but again, once this is, then you could, once it goes back into effect, you cannot have a location unless it's an area of need. Again, the purpose of the at-risk program is to provide a safe environment for kids to go, say, after school and have an educational and enrichment. It's really to make sure they're not out roaming the streets, that they have a good place to go. And when we have ATR, we're talking about this at-risk guidance book when you see the page number here. So just an example of the 50%, if a high school, say, is not, and this happens quite a bit, it's really for the district. So say where my eating site is here at the State Department of Ed. And so if I lived here, my kids would either go to an elementary, a middle, or a high school, depending on like this location. So how you become eligible is, say the high school is not 50%, maybe it's 35% free and reduced, but the middle school in the same attendance area. So say the kids from this elementary school, then once they leave this elementary school, they go to or elementary school, they go to a middle school. Once they leave this middle school, they're supposed to go to this high school. So if that middle school in that same attendance area does have over 50% free and reduced, then you use the middle school information for the elementary. And to be honest, most elementaries are the ones that usually are over the 50%. Many of the high schools are not. Just in general, I mean, like, it's not in all cases, but just the majority throughout the state, that's what we could probably say is the majority of the high schools do not meet the requirement. And a lot of it's because they're not giving the paperwork back to the school to make that determination. So when you come onto the program, it is required that you send us a map with the location of your eating site and the school site or the school district in that area. So again, if I want to become an eating site here, I want my eating site to be here at the Department of Ed, I have to give the office here, I have to give them a map of the Oklahoma City School District and then show them where I'm located within that map. If you, again, and it's based on if you were to live at that eating site, where would your kids attend school? It's not, because this has kind of happened. So say I'm here at the Department of Education, and one name I'm making up, or one name was an elementary school around the corner, but it's been closed for 10 years now. I've been working in this area for 20 years. So say I'm at this site, and if I lived here, my kids would go to Polk Elementary, but I actually service Wilson Elementary. So I actually go pick up kids from Wilson and bring them here. But if I were to live here, my kids wouldn't go to Wilson, they would go to Polk. So I need Polk information, not the kids that I'm actually servicing. It's where you, if you were to live here and your kids, if you lived here and you had kids, where would they go to school? Now, if you are in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, I would suggest to get the area map is you go to their school website. And Lott may be the same. A lot of the bigger districts, Edmond may be the same. I would check there first, but I do know for sure Oklahoma City and Tulsa, they do this, but check with other large districts. But once you go there, there's a place where you can type in your address and then it will tell you what elementary, middle school, and high school that's where your kids would go if you live there. You can print that out, and that's what we would need. If you're in, say, a small district so I'm from a small district. I had one school, actually I'm from one school. I grew up in Okarche. So all I would have to do is print out, say if I was having an eating site in Okarche, I would print out the district map. I could just print out the district map and then map and just put a dot and say, this is where my eating site is. Or you may have used there's one thing called Oklahoma Hometown Locator. And then I saw some information on greatschools.org. So this is some areas if you have not submitted your map first, which I'm assuming you may have, but I'm also saying this because if you ever do add sites, this is other information that you do have to submit with that. So we talked about how you have to be in an area of 50%, over 50% free and reduced. Well, how you find that information is you go out to the resource library, and we have out there the latest low income report. The latest low income report we have right now is from fiscal year 2020, and I think it's going to be that for a while. It's a huge document. It has every school site in Oklahoma. So all we need for you to do is go to the one page that has your school in it. So say I talked about Polk Elementary. I just need to show the page, go to Oklahoma City Public Schools and just print out the one with Polk and then highlight it and send it in to show that Polk Elementary is indeed over the 50% free and reduced. And again, we say use the most current because right now the most current is for fiscal year 2020. We did not do low income report last year. And I have a strong suspicion they're not going to use the low income report from this year. Because no one's really, it's going to be low. So activities. You must provide, again, a regularly educational or enrichment activity, and it needs to be in an organized, structured, and supervised environment. It needs to be open to all children. And I say that meaning, say you're a school district that's on here, and you want everybody in the school to be able to eat or participate. So you do need to kind of have a lot of, you can have activities for everybody. I had one school site that for the elementary kids, they did a Century 21st grant, Century 21. And then like for the high school, there was like, say, football practice going on, but then they did tutoring, they had band, they had a photography class, and then they did something with FFA. So they've made a lot of different things, and you can maybe see if anybody wants to volunteer or do any program. So that way it gives a lot of a range of options for kids to participate in. The thing is you want to offer things to kids, but the kids technically do not have to participate in the enrichment activity, but you do need to have things offered to them. The educational component has not been waived. You are required to do an educational or enrichment activity, even though COVID's going on. So participant eligibility. So this program is for any school age child. So they have to be school age in order to be able to eat. Any person with a disability who meets the requirements for the state of Oklahoma, that is anybody under the age of 21, they must be participating in an approved after school care program. Normally the meals need to be consumed on site with this program. So, which is a lot of it sounds right because they're coming there to eat and then participating in their educational or activity. Athletic programs, again, they are allowed to participate, but they cannot be limited to. You can't just say, I'm going to do at-risk program for my football team. You can't do that. Now they can attend it if it's open to everybody and you have other activities going on, but you can't just say my enrichment or educational component is football. That can't be the case because football is either only allowing certain groups. For instance, you have a varsity and a junior varsity, you're only allowing certain people in it. But you have to have things available to other people. You can't just be athletics only. So the time of meals, they do have to be at the end of the day after school has ended, or again, it can be on the weekends, holidays, including any vacation periods. And that's what we call Christmas break, spring break, fall break, those kind of breaks. It's just, you cannot do it during summer break. Now, I don't have any schools in here, or nobody indicated they were a school, so I'm going to go ahead and jump past this because this is only allowed for school districts. So if there is a school district on here, you can go ahead and tell me yes, but I only had like 4 people even respond to the poll. But if you are a school district, again, this all needs to be at the end of the day after the school. But since no one is still indicating they're with a school district, okay. So during the summer, again, you cannot participate in at-risk. At-risk is only during the school calendar year. So if there is any program that you want to do in the summer, you are allowed to do summer feeding, but that is a different program. And you do need to contact Dee Houston. She's gearing up for that right now because training is required, and she'll be starting her training actually in a week or so. So she'll be doing it for a couple of months. So if you are interested in doing summer, you do need to contact Dee in order to do so. There are things that are required to do to be able to participate. And I do know training is one of the items. And if you miss a training, then you wouldn't be able to participate. So documentation, again, that you would need for at-risk when you're applying, we have to have the VCA, which we talked about. We have to have something called the NDL. And that's only if you're multi-sided. And we talk about that in the multi-sided training, which if you're multi-sided, we'll tell you to do that. You just have to make sure that people participating are not on this list. If you were helping or doing CACFP before, and the review was really bad, and then there's steps to this, and then you end up being terminated. If it goes that far, then you go what's called on the NDL list. And the NDL list is you cannot participate in any CACFP program. Actually, I don't think you can participate in any child nutrition program for 7 years. So you have to ensure that everybody that is helping with the program is not on this list. And especially if we mostly focus on if you're multi-sided. You do have to have either a license or a DHS license exemption form. Schools are exempt from sending anything in, but we needed one of the two, either a license or either a DHS license exemption form. And I think I talk about that here in just a little bit. And then also, if you have an agreement with somebody, if somebody brings you meals every day, you have a contract with somebody, then we have to have a copy of that agreement on file as well. And then for at risk, we have to again have that area map. We have to have low income report data, your school district calendar. So again, if I lived here at this location, again, I'm in Oklahoma City district. So every year you have to submit a calendar, and all schools have it. It's a calendar that shows the full year on one page. It shows the beginning school day and the last day of the year, because we have to make sure you're not serving meals outside of that time. And then for our school districts, we have to have a copy of the bell schedule. And what a bell schedule is it's what they give accreditation to show when the school day ends and when the school day begins. So that's if you're applying. If you are renewing for the year, so if you're right now doing a renewal, you're not new and you're coming back on, you have to do the management plan, the VCA, which is in the application, but you have to do the paper copy if you were SD in the previous year. You again have to send us the school district calendar to show us the first and the last day of school. Again, a school district has to send us the bell schedule. If you're multi-sided, you have to show us that you checked the NDL list. And then again, we have to have the agreement to furnish food if you have a contract with somebody that gives you your food. Now, again, with the low income report, it is good every 5 years. So for instance, so say you got on this year and it shows that you're in an area that the high school is over, all the schools are over 50% free and reduced. You qualified. But maybe next year they dip below that and none of the schools qualify. You're still allowed to be on up until that 5-year mark. After 5 years, we recheck the low income report. If they're still below in 5 years, then you cannot participate in the program any longer. So let's start talking about the record keeping. So as we mentioned before, that all forms must be maintained daily by month at each site for anybody participating in CACFP. All records must be kept on site at the location approved in your application. So if you can't just take records home, they have to be where they state they are in your application agreement. Now, if you are multi-sided, you have multiple sites, we understand that maybe you have all your documents after each month. So every day they're at the site, but then once you're going to claim, you send it to your central site, and that's fine. You just put that address in the application agreement. So with at risk on the forms, and again, this is going back to the training manual, the white manual, you have to have attendance records. You need to have enrollment documentation. I highly recommend enrollment or sign-in sheets for those that are not enrolled but are still participating, and I'll explain that. And then we need to have a meal count worksheet. And just as a reminder, people keep forgetting this. When you do your meal counts, it's not based on attendance. It's based on the point of service. It's based on when that child takes a meal, because you can have 30 kids in attendance, but 28 ate, and 2 kids decided they didn't want to eat anything. We can't pay you for meals that you did not serve. So just a reminder, those meal counts are based on the point of service, not your attendance records. So it's a big thing. It cannot be based on your attendance. And this is what our attendance record looks like. So again, you can use this if you have any forms that you do want to use that you have created. Just talk to your program specialist and just to make sure that it's okay to use those forms. A lot of people use their own forms, but we just want to make sure that they meet our requirements. So always ask your program specialist first. We're also going to talk about like menu assert form. So we talk about the menu assert form in meal pattern requirements, but the menu assert form is where you write down what you prepared and what you served that day and the amounts. Schools can use production records, which is the form that they use to write like the lunch and the breakfast counts, or their lunch and breakfast, what they served. We have to have a food purchasing form, which I will go over that in this, what we're talking about now. I'm going to talk about expenditure reimbursement worksheet, and then you have to have supporting documentation with that, which is like the receipts, pay stubs, timesheets, things like that. And then it is required for CACFP that you do annual training, which I'll talk about later on, but you are required to do annual staff and civil rights training every year. So make sure when you do that, that you do keep the paperwork that you need for that. So the food purchasing form. So the food purchasing form is, and I'll show you what it looks like. It is required if the receipt or the invoice is not itemized. So a not itemized receipt is the one, the paper receipt that you get from say Brahms, Crest, Walmart, Homeland, anything like that. That is that's a receipt, and it's not itemized. And I'll explain to you what an itemized receipt is. You must have a copy of the original receipt, even if it's faded. It needs to be attached to the food purchasing form. So just to kind of give you an idea too, if you buy anything and it's not reimbursable on its own, but it's an ingredient towards the reimbursable meal, then you can put it in the food and milk section. An example is if you're not buying the right deli meat, if you're buying a cheese product, which I talk about this stuff in the meal pattern, and then any condiments like ketchup. Ketchup helps the meal taste better, so it's an ingredient, but it's not like ketchup is not considered a vegetable. It's just a condiment. If it cannot be determined when an item is on the receipt or the invoice, it has to go in the non-reimbursable section. And then any item that does not count towards the reimbursable meal and it's unallowable, it must be put in the non-reimbursement section. And that'd be things like cookies. Like cookies are not allowed on CACFP. So if you serve a cookie, which you can, it doesn't count for anything, and you can't charge it off to CACFP. So it goes into the non-reimbursable section. So this is the copy of the food purchasing form. So at the top, you put, say it's Walmart or Crest or Reese's, and then you put your center name and the date of the receipt. You do one of these per receipt. You may even need more of these per receipt. We also have in the resource library at the very, very bottom, it's called worksheets, and we keep all interactive forms in there. So this is interactive. It's in Excel, so it will calculate everything for you. So on the receipt total needs to be the same as the grand total on here. Now you can be off by a penny, but you cannot be off by any more than a penny. The reason why you may be off by a penny is because say you do have items that are food and milk that are food related and non-reimbursable, and if you have taxes, you have to consider the taxes, and so it may make this off by a penny. Now, if you use the interactive form, the last time I used it, if I'm remembering correctly, because sometimes we've had different forms, we've updated some forms, but the tax amount is on the receipt. So it could say like 8.5%, 8.27%. In the Excel file, when you open it up over here on the next page, it will say tax rate, and you put the percentage in there, and then it will automatically calculate the rate for you. Now, the reason why these are highlighted in here, they're not highlighted in the manual, but I have updated them. The reason they're highlighted is because I took what this said word for word from actual receipts. So when I said earlier, if you were to put like here, it said tub, it said 1 8-ounce tub. If I put tub on here and didn't put butter, I don't know what tub is. I don't know what that means. And if you don't remember what that was, then we can't allow it because we don't know if it was an allowable expense or an unallowable expense. So and again, these are from actual receipts. Right here, this C, what's the back one? It says COJKSHRF. That is Colby Jack shredded. And so again, put what it is in parentheses next to it. This one that said twin 18 PEG is eggs. Calm Pantry is cream of mushroom soup. So again, it like this one right here on the receipt, it said GVRTN. I would have no clue what GVRTN is. So you need to make sure, if you don't know what it is, and you write next to it what it is, like rotini. This was rotini noodles, and the GV stood for great value. So we just need to know what the product is. If you put on here twin 18 PEG, we will have you put it over here where you don't know what that is unless you list next to it what that item is. So just a reminder about, and that's why you have to do this, is because your receipts are not itemized. We don't know how many you purchased and the unit size that was purchased. We have to know what it is and then the cost. So this itemizes the receipt for you. Now, you do not have to use this form if the receipt or the invoice that you have is detailed and it is itemized. So that means if that receipt shows the quantity, the weight, the size, and the price, then you don't have to do that form. So an example of those is if you use like a vendor, like say you use Highland for milk, or you use Cisco, Benicky, Tankersley, US Foods, Mid-America, Gadarian, any of those. Also, what we do is we've noticed if you do any grocery pickup or grocery delivery, or even if you do the Sam's, like if you do the scan at Sam's, because once you have that receipt, it's very detailed. If you do grocery pickup at all, like say you buy Cheerios, it will have a picture of the box and it will say 3 32-ounce boxes of Cheerios. It's very detailed. If it's detailed, you don't have to do the food purchasing form. Now, each of the receipts do still need to have indicated on there what was food and milk, what is a supply, and what is maybe non-reimbursable. You still need to break it out because that's what goes on to the expenditure worksheet. So you can just write it at the bottom. You don't have to do it in columns like it was on the food purchasing form. So receipts and invoices. So again, you have to have a copy of the receipt. And when I say original receipt, I'm talking about the paper receipts from like Walmart, even if it's faded. Now, like I do grocery delivery. I'm legally blind. I haven't driven in 3 years. So I can only see directly in front of me. I can't see next to me. And so when I quit driving, I have all my stuff delivered now. Well, the beauty of having it delivered or having a grocery pickup, I had one daycare that solely did grocery pickup. One, because it saves time, but the main reason is because she kept losing her receipts. So she could always go out and print the receipt. So that is a beauty of it as well. So the only original receipt we need is if it's the paper receipts from like Walmart, Research, Crest, Homeland, any of those locations, Kroger. We cannot accept any receipt that's been altered. And I'm just telling you what we have seen in the past. That's why we bring this up. Or if you cut off the date, or if you cut off the bottom where there's no barcode. Now we do know that Sam's, if you do the click and go, the scan and go, it will not print off a barcode, but we also do validate it against your bank or credit card statement. So but there's some that we see that they'll cut it off. And if it's on there, we need to have it. We kind of know who has it and who doesn't have it receipt wise. If there's no date anywhere on the receipt, we can't accept it because we don't know what month you purchased that food in. It could have been from last year. And then again, if you do a grocery pickup or grocery delivered, it has to be the final receipt. It cannot be a receipt from when you submit the order or it's still in process. Again, I am actually having groceries come tonight. And especially with COVID, every time I get groceries, something's either out of stock, so they either substituted or I don't get it. So we have to have that last receipt because if they substituted something on you or if you didn't get it, you can't say that you got something when you really didn't get it. You didn't pay for that item. We have to have that final last receipt. So we talk about your receipts for that month, and then we talk about the food purchasing form. So what do you do at the end of the month with all of your CACFP receipts? So at the end of the month, let me turn off there we go, turn off my phone. Okay, so at the end of the month, you take everything that you have that you spent CACFP dollars on, all your receipts and invoices, we need them, and you have them and you put them on your expenditure worksheet. Again, this is only for items that you use for CACFP. So if you bought something for your center on here, it can't be used. It's only for CACFP allowable items. Again, it must be in the budget section in your online application and agreement, and it needs to be approved by our office. Items that are used for the whole center, like paper towels, maybe you buy paper towels once a month, you pay $10 for paper towels, and 50% of them are used in the bathroom and 50% of them are used in the kitchen. You can only charge off those that you use in the kitchen. So you can prorate the cost. Either you can do every other month, you can put on paper towels, the next month mark off paper towels off your receipt, or you can just, like, if it's $10, you can mark it and put $5. You cannot charge it off all the time to CACFP if it's used for everything. Again, it's only for allowable expenses. And if you're not for sure if it's allowable or not, we do have a small list on page A60. It's not all inclusive. It's just some things that we have seen. Now, when I talk about it must be in the budget, if you spend it for CACFP, you can charge it off to CACFP, but again, it has to be in the budget and it has to be approved. So an example of this is we were doing in September training. And we had a lady that said because she can't find styrofoam plates anymore, she went and bought the reusable hard plastic plates, and now they're going to use that instead of styrofoam. Well, or maybe you have a microwave. That may be even better. That would be a supply, but maybe your microwave went out and you want to charge it off to CACFP. You can, but it needs to be in your small equipment area of your budget, and it has to be approved. So let's just say, I know you may not expect your microwave to go out, and it does. You go buy one and be like, hey, we use this only for food for CACFP. I'm going to charge it all off. Say you spent $300 on it. Then go into your budget, put $300 for small equipment and what you got. And then they may ask to see a receipt. The office might, that's fine, or an invoice or something. And then once it's approved, you can charge it off once they approve it. But if you put microwave on there and it's not approved in your budget, we'll have to take it off of your expenses because it wasn't approved in the budget. So this form is actually one of the most important forms that you will do in CACFP, and I'll explain why. So again, you do this by month, and this is for the month of October, and up here at the top, they list all the receipts that they got for food and milk. And as you can see here, it's in the column food and milk. Then we have a non-food purchases, which is your supplies like foil, paper plates, anything like that, paper towels, that goes here. And then it lists how much they spent down in this area. So, well, then right here, what they did is they did labor. So this site is charging off labor. You don't necessarily have to, and I'm going to explain to you why. But so they listed free to cook, 2 teachers, and then free to cook again, and the same 2 teachers. Well, why did they list them twice? The reason they did in this example is because they get paid twice a month. And so they're listing how much they got paid per pay period. Now, I had one center that they told me that they pay weekly. They talked to their program specialist and they said that they could list it once. That's between you and your program specialist. Contact them to ask them how they would like it. Sometimes they're going to have you do things and they tell you for a certain reason why they want you to do it that way. So talk to them first. But they did the cook and the teachers probably with the reason they're listed on here is they probably help serve. And then they have a director on here and she does the paperwork at the end of the month, like get all this together and submit the claim. So they charge that off. Now, right down here, it says non-program meals. And what this is, you're never probably going to use this. You're never going to need it, but we have it on here. So the last column is income. It's income to CACFP. It's not income to your daycare center or to your nonprofit. So for instance, the reason it's October, they probably had, in this example, a Halloween party and they invited parents to come and then they fed them, say, dinner. They had chili that night. So if the parents came and had dinner, you have to charge your non-program. Program adults can be absorbed into the cost, and those are the people that do help with the program, like they're your teachers, your director, anybody that helps. Non-program are people that do not have any affiliation with CACFP. So let's just say parents. And so this says that they had 15 parents that came in 8 and they had to pay $388. We do have a certain amount that's required to be paid. So if you do want to do something like that, again, talk to your regional specialist, or you can contact our office for more information. And this $58.20 is based off of the income that they got for CACFP. So everything's been listed on here for the month. And down here in number 14, this is the total down here, except for you can't include income. You just leave the income out. Number 15 is the reimbursement that they received for the month of October. So they do all of this, and you have to do this form before you get paid, before you submit your claim. All paperwork must be done before you submit the claim. Because when we come out, we're validating the claim. So if you don't have all your paperwork done, how did you validate that claim? So just kind of an FYI with that. So we reimburse them, and once they got reimbursed, they put the amount right here. We don't see a lot of people do this, but you can. So what they're saying is for the month of October, they spent $2,737.40 on CACFP between food, milk, and labor. But we reimburse them $856, so they have an operating balance of $1,881. The reason this form is so important is because we have two things that we look at. We make sure you're financially viable, that you do not need our funds to operate the program. Number 2 is this right here. You have to have what's called a nonprofit food service account. Your CACFP account has to be nonprofit. So what that means is you cannot make money on the federal government. You have to spend everything that we give you and more, so that way you're not in a for-profit with CACFP. So if we give you $1,000 a month in reimbursement, you should be spending that and more between food, labor, and milk and supplies. So it is allowed to have a little bit of carryover. So maybe one month we give you $1,000 and you spend $800. That's okay. You can have a little bit go forward. But if you, well, look at the one current month that you have, but say that you spent $500 and we gave you $1,000 in reimbursement, we're going to go look at your past month's expenditure worksheet to make sure you can be what's called a 3-month operating balance. So we definitely need the last 3 months, but you may have had a big purchase, like maybe you bought a microwave 3 months ago. You can give us as many as you want back for us to look at, but you cannot make money on this program. All the money that we give you, you have to spend it back into the program. So that is another thing that we look at. So you have to be for profit. It means you have to, and we understand if you are technically and I know we have nonprofits on here, we have actual nonprofits. So if you are a nonprofit, we understand that you not necessarily can make a profit, but we have to make sure that you are subsidized correctly or that you can run without our funds. That's number 1 of being financially viable. But number 2 is you have to be in a nonprofit food service account with CACFP, and all the money that we give you, you have to spend it back into the program. Because we've had issues where people were getting, say, making up numbers. Let's say they got $5,000 a month in reimbursement and they were spending $1,000 on food, milk, labor, and supplies. So they were profiting $4,000 a month. You cannot do that on this program. You have to spend all the money that we give you back into the program. So I did talk about labor. You can put operating labor on there, which is your food service. You can also do admin. Again, all your labor has to be approved though. If you are putting labor on here, but you have no labor for CACFP approved, you can't charge it off. It has to be approved in your budget. You cannot charge off more than what is approved in the budget. So let's just say you have a cook, and I don't remember how they change the budget every year, it seems like, how it's laid out. But let's just say that you pay the person $15 an hour, and you only charged, you're only saying that you paid them $12 an hour because you didn't update your budget because you gave them a raise. So you can only charge off $12, not the $15. Now, I would tell you, say the person is making $12 and you might pay them $15 eventually, put put $15 in there because you can always go up, and that way you don't have to go change your budget again. You also cannot charge off more than the employee is paid. I've been in a situation, I went to a daycare, and they said that the cook was making $1,000 a month, which sounds very reasonable. I asked to see the pay stub, which we will do. And when I got the pay stub, she was actually making $1,200 a year. She was mostly volunteer. She only got paid $200 a month. You can, if you are new to and say you don't get a paycheck, you cannot charge off. If she's only getting paid $200, if we have a check for $200 a month, she can only get charged off $200 a month. You cannot charge off more than what she's actually being paid. Labor cannot be paid with cash, Venmo, or Cash App because it's not allowable as taxes have not been paid, and labor must be W-4 and not a 1099. If it's a 1099, it cannot be charged off to CACFP. Taxes have to be paid. It has to be W-4. Okay. Now, again, during a review, we're going to look at all bank and credit card statements of accounts used to make any purchases for CACFP. So we've had some people say, well, I don't want you looking at my personal credit card statements. Well, if you don't want us looking at your personal credit card statements, then you need to open up another credit card just for CACFP. So if you're buying things with CACFP funds or any statements with labor or anything like that, we have the right to look at it because CACFP funds were used. Donated food, we do not allow for donated food for our program. So if I had a daycare and a church, and they had a sweet old little man who used to go to Sam's and buy everybody little bags of chips, you can give it to them, but you cannot use it as part of the reimbursable meal. It's just an extra. The only food that you can be reimbursed for is food items that you actually purchased. And reasons for part of this stuff is because we've had issues with people not spending enough money. And if you're not spending enough money, then we won't allow for donated. Then why are you getting donated food? So no donated foods. If you have multiple centers, you have to have an expenditure worksheet per site. And if you have a multiple center, so say, I'm not going to see it really was at risk, but we've had some people that have like 4 daycares and they each have their own agreement number. They're not under one agreement number, which makes you multi-sided. They're called single-sided. Each one has to have their own receipts. If you're multi-sided, where you have one agreement number and they fall under that, you can share receipts or you can buy and then transfer food out. But if each entity is its own agreement number, you cannot share receipts. Each site has to have their own receipts if you're not multi-sided. But a lot of you in at risk, you go multi-sided versus doing individual agreements. So the reimbursement and revenue rates for CACFP, they change in July. You can get reimbursed for 1 meal and 1 snack, up to 1 meal and 1 snack per day. CAC at-risk revenue can be spent on any child nutrition program. So we don't have any schools on here, but so a school can use the revenue also for, or say you do summer feeding, you can spend at-risk money for summer feeding and summer feeding for at-risk because they're both child nutrition programs. And again, we don't have any schools on here, but these are codes that schools are required to use for CACFP. So now let's talk about other required records. So if any other record keeping forms you are using different than either in our manual or in our resource library that's online, again, just make sure you get approval for that. I talked about that before because we've had some situations where it did not have all the information we needed and we had to take money back. So you want to make sure, a lot of you that do use your own forms, your forms are way better than ours, but our forms that we have created are just better for the masses. But just make sure if you're using a form that you don't see in the book or see online, that make sure you get approval for that. You also are required to have a building for the future fact sheet, and it looks like this right here. All you do is you put your information in here. So let's just say your Bob Brown nonprofit, and you put your address of the site that you're eating at. You do need to hand this out once a year to the participants. And if we have a daycare, you already do this, so you don't have to do it again for at-risk. You already do that. Inventory is required for food and milk. It is, you do it monthly, and it's for all unopened items on hand. Now, I will state, if you're a school, you can use your current inventory system, but maybe you already have an inventory system you've been using. I've had some that they've reached out and said, hey, I do perpetual inventory. Again, contact your program specialist. Some people, they're like, that's the easiest way for me to do it is perpetual. So they just talk to your program specialist if you do anything besides this. So this is at the end of the month. It's you go into your food bin and you find out everything that has been unopened. And we do that so you don't have to do everything. You just do everything that's not been opened yet. We have it in sections of meat alternate, grain, bread, fruit, and vegetable. And then on the back side, it's a front and back. We have milk or formula. And if you have infant food, which I think a lot of you will not, well, you can't because they're not school-age children. And then we have optional condiments and extra food items, and then CACFP resupplies. You do not have to fill those out if you do not want to, but you may want to just see what you have on hand. Because sometimes I've been to some schools, especially schools have always been required to do inventory. And there was one school that I went to years ago, and the lady was like, they had a new lady come in, and the lady just ordered the same thing every month. She didn't go look at what she had, and they did the summer feeding program, and they did the whole summer feeding program based on the food that she already bought because she never went and looked at what they had, and they were over purchasing. That's what happened. So, but do this every month. And again, it's mostly for the items in the front and milk. So we added some new forms to the manual this year that were not in there last year, but like the inventory is new. That's new as of this year. That form is an interactive, so it is in Excel. We also have it in, we call it a cost, we have it where you can cost everything out. So we have another inventory in there that has tabs at the bottom. It has like meat alternate, bread, all that. And if you want to cost it, you can do that. But we are not requiring that you cost it. We just need to know what you have on hand and then the amounts. The meal service change form is in the manual. If you need to revise a claim, that is also in the manual. And we have the review notification letter in the manual. And these are the pages that you can locate them on. And then something else that we added this year, which I know some of you are new, is we have what's called form completed by. You don't have to, this doesn't have to be a signature. It can just be printed on here, but we do need to know who filled out the form, because if we have questions on the form, we need to know who to ask. That's all it means. Because sometimes you may have like 3 people doing the paperwork. Maybe you have like the cook filling out one thing, you're filling out one thing, and then you have your teachers filling out something else. We just need to know if we have questions, who do we ask? So it doesn't have to be a signature, but we just need to know a name. So these are additional things that we do look at during a review. So this is on the notification letter, but we need board minutes if you're a nonprofit. We need food safety, like we'll check your fridge and freezer temperatures. We'll need to make sure if you have past records for CACFP, we need to see where those are at, or you make sure you have them. And any contracts that you have approved by us, if you outsource for any food or services. We're supposed to have a copy of the contract, but you should also have a copy of that contract. Claims, we don't pay claims after 60 days. You have up to 60 days to claim. You need to keep your payment notices on file. Any claims needing a revision, need to make sure you fill out that claim revision form and send it to our office. And then in the manual as well, we have what we call a monthly record keeping checklist. And this checklist lets you know every month what documentation we need. So it's a pretty cool little form. We've had it in there forever. And when we had one manual, it was mostly just for daycares, but we do have it now. It will tell you if you're at risk, what exactly we need for at risk. Because it got very confusing because everything was just mainly for a daycare center. So when it came to at risk, everything still had daycare center stuff in there. So it's really nice to have the separate manuals so you know exactly what you need, so you're not overdoing the work, because that's what kind of was happening. So we do take back money. We will take back money. We take back money if we show up and there's no records, if your meal counts are not properly maintained or incorrect, which it happens. Sometimes you transpose a number. If your records or documents do not support the claim, if you share receipts with another facility, if you claim adult meals, this is only for children. You can only claim children that are 18 below or 21 below if it's a disability. but you cannot, it's only for children. It's only for school age children. We'll also take back funds if food items indicated as being served on the menu as served form, but you don't have receipts to support that. So let's just say that we do a deal where we look at how much milk is served. And milk is required at any meal. It's just not required at snack. So let's say you do supper, and we could calculate how many kids you had. So we know that you would need 25 gallons of milk. And we look at your receipts and you only purchased 10 gallons of milk and there's no milk listed on your receipts. If you are short on milk for the review, we take back every single meal milk was in it. And if you only serve supper, we're going to take every single meal back, because we cannot determine what meals had the right amount or did any of them have the right amount of milk served. You have to serve the correct amount of food. So training and civil rights. So you are required to have somebody with your entity be what we call a designated trainer. So someone at your facility must conduct training every single year. You have to document the date, agenda, and topics, and have signatures of those that attended. You don't have to do it in one day. You can break it out, but you do have specific topics you have to train on. And we do have to just make sure that those were covered every year. A lot of people do that though. They'll do like a professional development day and they'll talk about everything that they need to, including CACFP. You have to make sure you have all training information on file, and you do have to have training completed by September 30th of every year. Now, what happens, a lot of people, they'll come to our trainings, we do them in September, and then they'll go back and then they'll tell everybody all the new stuff that we went over and everything that we did. So that's what a lot of people tend to do, or you can even do it like in October. So as long as it's from October 1st, September 30th, as you have it, you could even go to our training in September and then conduct, as long as you've already had training that year, you can do the training in October for the next year and have it done already. Some people wait till the very end. Some people do it right at the beginning. These are the required topics. You have to talk about CACFP, meal patterns, the reimbursement system, accurate meal counts, claim submissions, claim review process, record keeping, and civil rights. Now, civil rights is the only one that everybody does have to be trained on, but you could do everything else as like either one-on-one, you can do say meeting style or conference. So say you have one other person that does the claim, you only have to go over claim submissions. You can only go with them. You can go over it with everybody if you want to, but it's not required. Just again, make sure you document the conversation that you had training. The training can be as long as you want, it can be as short as you want, but it does have to be covered. We require training at the State Department. It is required for all new centers coming onto the program. It is required if we come out to do a review and the review doesn't go very well. Again, you're called seriously deficient. If you're seriously deficient, we do this training every month. I do at risk every month, meal patterns every month, and admin review every month. Admin and purchasing. And your program specialist will tell you what courses that you have to take. But if you do not complete your training within 60 days, so that's 2 months of your review, then you will automatically be proposed for termination because you did not complete the corrective action. So it is required that you attend everything they tell you to attend. And then we started this last year, that if you're new or if you're wanting to renew your application, then you have to go to training as well. We did it because we've been doing so much new stuff. And not just that, but people hadn't come for 10 to 20 years. And then we got to do a review and they're like, well, I didn't know that. It's like, well, it changed 2 years ago. And if they're not going to training, how do they know? And then the review gets bad and then you could take money back. And it just is, that's why we require it every year. So that way everybody's on the same page and they know, so they can't say that they didn't know. And then that way, maybe money won't be taken back. Again, all of our live trainings, so either if it's in person or Zoom, you have to make sure you're in the training calendar and registered. So, because it shows up on your business maintenance page. If you're signed up and the training calendar says something else, like say you sign up as Bob Smith in the training calendar and you log in as Kendra Mervelt, I'm not going to know that's the same person because it's a different name. You have until 9 p.m. tonight to go register if you have not. Or if you need to go in there and maybe somebody else's name was in there and you took their spot, you have until 9 p.m. tonight to go into the training calendar. And if you don't know how to do it, it's actually very easy, but we do have instructions in the resource library under training and workshops. It gives instructions on how to do it. Or we have a 1 minute, literally it's a 1 minute YouTube video on how to do it. We also have some self-paced trainings. They're not always allowed to do self-paced trainings. It is up to your program specialist in CACFP. So if like you're new, I think you can't do self-paced. I think they want you to come to the live training. But they are self-paced. It's a lot of the courses that we've already taught on are out there. You have to watch the full course and then do a small quiz, and then they will give you a certificate at the end. And again, we have instructions out there, and then we also have the courses that are available. Because you do civil rights on OSDE Connect, which is the self-paced. We also have additional trainings, Team Nutrition, which is USDA. They do a webinar the third Thursday of every month. The Institute of Child Nutrition, they do some live trainings via Zoom. They do some live trainings. They're not doing any in Oklahoma. And then we have to make them come, but they're not going to be traveling for a while. And then a lot of them are self-paced. And it's really, the Institute of Child Nutrition is of any program on child nutrition and over any topic you can imagine. And then we also have Cooking for Kids, which is very new. This came out last month. If you're not on the mailing list yet, Cassie just sent this out yesterday or this morning. She's emailed this out. You can register with Cooking for Kids, and they have a desktop, I forgot what they call it, but these are all the trainings that they have. They're going from January till August. They're live trainings. They're in person. They teach you how to review and you will taste new recipes. They usually teach food safety and knife skills. They will effectively how to use a standardized recipe. It's more for the cook. Strengthen focus, on food safety and improve your skills. So they're really good. I don't know how long they are, but again, they're in person. But if you do want to register, this is the information you can go to. It's cookingforkids.ok.gov/training. This is for a school side and CACFP, but this is for CACFP specifically. So they won't have you go to the school side. With this, they are geared on buying food from like Walmart, not from a vendor. Schools, they focus on vendors because that's how they all buy their food. So it's so where you who go to Walmart can also do all this stuff. And then civil rights training, again, it must be done every year. Again, it is an OSDE Connect and self-paced. You can go out again to the resource library under training and workshops. We have civil rights by itself, the instructions, or you can go to OSDE Connect instructions, and it'll tell you all that we have available, including civil rights. So there's two ways to find it. And then if we don't have any school districts on here, but if we do, if you've already done civil rights training for CNP for child nutrition, you do not have to do it twice. One time is enough. And we do it live once a year, and it's usually in October. Last year was October 1st. So we do usually do it live once, and then it goes to OSDE Connect. It's a 1-hour training. Civil rights, if you send anything out that is for the food program, which would be menus, if you post menus online, or if you do a menu and you send it out and let people leave your facility with the menu, then you need to have a non-discrimination statement on the menus. An injustice for all poster, everybody will have one. If you're new, we will give you one, and I'll show you what it is. It just needs to be posted in a visible location. Everybody is also to have procedures for filing a civil rights complaint for CACFP, and you have that. It's in the resource library, and it is in your manual. And if they do have a complaint, it can only be on these 6 topics, which is race, color, national origin, sex, age, and disability. This is the non-discrimination statement. Here's the first part. Here's the second part. It is in the training manual, so you can copy and paste that. And then this is the injustice for all poster that you will get if you haven't gotten it yet. Now, one thing is civil rights is no longer allowed to be reported by visual observation. So with a lot of our at-risk, you guys are not doing anything. Like we want you to have enrollment, but you're not required to use our enrollment form. You're not required to do applications. they would like parents to self-report, and a child can be multiracial. So if you want to create something, a form, we do have an enrollment form you can use, but you do need to create something that you can give a parent to fill out about race and ethnic information, but the family is not required to fill it out. But just again, we're waiting on more guidance from this. I'm not expecting to get guidance anytime soon, but just kind of an FYI that with civil rights, we can no longer do a visual because like Cassie will tell you, her son, blonde hair, blue eyes, cute little dimples, but he is half Asian, or he not probably half Asian, but he's Asian as well. He's white and Asian. So, but if looking at him, you would never think Asian at all. So that's why we want the family to self-report and not go based on visual information, because visual can be way off about what they actually are, what their race really is. Okay, just a little bit about procurement. So with procurement, what this means is anything that since you are receiving federal dollars, you have to procure per USDA requirements. And that means that all purchasing transactions must be conducted in a manner that is full and open competition. All CACFP, you must all have written procedures, which would be a procurement plan. We do have a prototype that you can use. It's in the resource library under procurement. You can print it out. A lot of you are going to do the procurement prototype or the procurement for small centers or for centers or for CACFP. If you're a large entity where you spend over $250,000 a year on food and such, or for CACFP items, you will want the formal one. And it is in there as well, but not many of you will use that. So the procurement plan, if you want to create your own, it needs to have methods of procurement. It has to have a code of conduct. It has to have a statement in there regarding minority firms, women's business, enterprise, and labor surplus. And it also has to have a chart of procedures. Our prototype has all of that. The only thing is our chart of procedures is separate, so you need to print that on your own. And the chart of procedures, it will say like milk. It's already listed in there, like milk or meat or bread. And then it will say how often do you procure it, meaning how often do you look at prices, or do you, and then it will say what is the method of procurement? I'm going to go over the methods of procurement with you. I'm mostly just going to do micro purchasing and small purchase because that's what most of you are going to do. And I just want to explain the difference. So a lot of people get confused between this because they just look at the dollar amount and be like, oh, I spend that much or less, and so that's what I do. And that's not the case. So micro purchasing, yes, you cannot exceed $10,000 per transaction. However, if you do micro purchasing, you don't have to check prices. The prices do have to be reasonable, but you have to buy your stuff from multiple entities for CACFP. You have to spread the wealth. So an example of this, and the price has to be reasonable. So an example of this is maybe you buy your food from Walmart. Maybe you buy some food from Restaurant Depot. You buy your milk from Highland. You buy paper from Staples. You buy some CACFP related supplies like foil, paper plates. You buy those from Amazon. And maybe you buy another thing instead of just Amazon, you do Crest, just naming some stuff. So you spend all of your CACFP funds with multiple people. Now, some of you, as long as a lot of you are spending under $250,000, but if you check prices, you are doing small purchase. If you can tell me that Walmart's milk is $3.50 and Crest milk is $3.65, you just did small purchase. You checked prices. Now, when you check prices, you don't have to spread the wealth. You don't even have to buy from the one that's the lowest. You just have to tell us why you are purchasing from them. So an example is to say Walmart's milk is $3.50, Crest is $3.65. And say that you buy all your stuff from Walmart. You still have to check prices with somebody else. Walmart could be the cheapest, but maybe they're not. And all you would say is you go to Walmart because they have grocery pickup. And so it saves on labor first to shopping. And then it also, because it gives you a detailed receipt, so it's less paperwork also on the other end. But you are explaining to us why you're using them. Now, what you do need to do, because you check prices, and you can check prices once a year, but what I would do is maybe write 15 items down that you buy. milk, bread, spaghetti noodles, hamburger meat, sliced peaches, the same size. And what I would do is go to, say, Crest or Reese's, and then go to Walmart and just write the price down of what it is, what those prices are on the 15 items at Crest, the 15 items at Walmart. And then at the bottom, it will let you know. And that way you can be like, yeah, overall on what you mostly buy, it's cheaper at Walmart. And that you don't, and if it's cheaper there, you don't have to justify why you buy from them. But you have to justify why you buy from somebody if it's not the cheapest. So I hope that makes sense. A lot of you, to be honest, are using small purchase. So, and again, this slide right here is just to give you an idea. So when you come back to look at things, it kind of gives you a good idea between the difference between small purchase and micro purchasing. And then formal is if you are spending over $250,000, mostly a year is when people do procurement. You do have to submit some specifications to at least 2 vendors, or if you're, and then if you're doing an advertisement. Now, if you are using a vendor like Cisco, Beneke, and you are spending less than $250,000, you do need to contact both companies to get prices. Again, that's doing, if you're using a vendor, you have to do small purchase. But let's just say that you use a vendor, you use Beneke, and you were having hot dogs that day for lunch, and there were no buns. So you went to Walmart just to buy buns. Because you already have a vendor, you did small purchase. You had to go to Walmart because you needed the item. That's kind of an emergency purchase. And because you already have a vendor, you can use that as a micro purchase for the hot dogs that just didn't show up on the. So if you have like an emergency purchase, it's considered more of a micro purchase. And just go someplace that has a reasonable price to get it. So there are 2 types. There is sealed for bid or RFP. Those are the formal types. But again, most of you will not do that. Okay, so contracting for food or services. If you want to contract for any services, the entity has the final administrative and financial responsibility. So if we find something and you have to pay back money due to whoever you contracted with, you have to pay that back. We don't go after the person. We have a contract with you and you have a contract with them, but we go after you. You cannot contract for any critical management functions, but this is only if you're spending CACFP funds on it. If you're not spending CACFP funds, we don't have to have a contract, but if you're spending CACFP funds, say on security, which accounting services, data services, maybe you use Minute Menu and you pay for that. Which is not really, I guess it's a software, but any equipment rental, you have to have a contract. We have to have a copy of the contract first before you can go out on bid, and definitely before you approve it. So we have to have a copy of that, any contract for services. If you contract for food, you have to have an agreement between the facility that you're getting the food from and the provider. And when I talk about a food service agreement to furnish food, what this means is say a lot of times say you have an agreement with a school district, and every day the school is bringing you food, like at lunch or a supper, they're bringing you spaghetti one day. The next day they bring you hot dogs. Like you have an agreement, and every day they're bringing you food that you just kind of serve out. We have to have a copy of that contract. You have to use our contracts, and they're in the resource library. And then we have to have a copy of that once it's signed by both parties and filled out. So if you contract for food, this is kind of how it goes, is if you contract with a school district, the school is responsible for what we call the production records or the menu of serve forms. If you just use a vendor, what you do is every day they deliver the meals. And they have to give you what's called a contract meal delivery receipt. And it is in the agreement to furnish food, and I'll show you what it looks like. And then what happens is the institution, which is you have to keep that form. That contract meal delivery receipt form shows what they delivered food-wise that day. You have to have it. If you don't have it, we'll take meals back because it shows that they weren't served. You have to keep those forms. It's considered your menu of serve form. And then what happens is at the end of the month, so say you're with a school district, that school district will bill you for the meals that you bought from them, and then you as the CACFP institution submit the claim to us. They can't claim on your behalf. They just bring you food, you pay them for the food that they gave you, and then you reimburse per child that ate. That's the thing, again, it's done by meal count. So let's just say, and I have seen this quite a bit, let's just say that every day you're licensed for 25 and the school brings you 25 breakfasts. And I know you may be at risk, but this is my example. Say every day for breakfast, you order 25, they bring you 25 meals. And then they say, okay, by 9 a.m., let me know how many kids you have. You have 18, and then they prepare 18 meals for lunch. But every day they give you 25. So they gave you 25 meals. They're going to bill you for 25 meals. But you can only claim with us the food that was actually served to a child. You cannot claim more than attendance. So if you had if they charged you for 25 meals, that's how many they gave you, they can do that. You only had 18 kids at 8, you can only claim for 18 kids. Okay. And then this is a copy of the contract meal delivery receipt. So you need to make sure you have one of these on file for every day that they bring you meals. So let's just say something happened and you lost a week worth of these. If you lose these, we will have to take back all the meals for that week because we do not show that any meals were served because you do not have this form. We don't know what was served. We don't know how much was served. And then if you do contract with the school district, you want to get a contract. I get now if you're just coming on the program, you won't. But if you renew, we want the renewal from July 1 to June 30th. We do it on the school's federal fiscal year or on the school's fiscal year. And they are required to charge you a certain amount. So just so you are aware of that, that is a USDA rule. They can't get out of that. So, and then the meal requirements. So meals must be served free to all children. You can't charge anybody for meals. USDA foods, which is commodities, which are what only schools get commodities. They can use that for at risk. Meals need to be eaten on site. Meals served during the program time. And then the children must be a school-age child. They have to be even in a Head Start, or school to participate. If they're not in one of those programs, they cannot participate. They're not considered school age. You can only serve 2 meals per day. 1 main meal, so a breakfast, lunch, or supper, and then a supplement, which is a snack. Those are the only 2 that can be served. Now, I don't think we have any schools on here, but you have to serve the meal patterns for CACFP unless you're a school. If you are a school, you are allowed to choose if you want to do CACFP or the National School Lunch Program, and you have to make a decision and go. You can't be like, well, today I want to do CACFP, tomorrow I want to do National School Lunch. You can't do that. It's one or the other. You have to pick. Just for your records, we have the meal patterns in here for NSLP and CACFP. And then this is a copy of the production record that schools will use, that they can use. And this is what the menu as served form looks like that you need to do. Again, I don't go over it. I go over it in the meal patterns when we talk about that training. But people also ask, what will cause us to take back money on the food side? One is if you have to serve at least 1 whole grain rich item per day. And so if you don't serve one, then we take the meals back and take at least a meal back. If you serve more than 1, you can serve juice 1 time per day. If you only have 1 meal, you can serve juice every day. Serving lunch meat that does not meet meal pattern requirements. Lunch meat's a big one that you have to pay attention to. Serving a grain-based dessert, which would be like cookies, cake, brownie, those kind of things are not allowed to be served. Nutri-Grain bar, cereal bars, they're not allowed. If you don't serve enough food, if you not serve enough food, we take the meals back. If we find a food that is not in the food buying guide, and the food buying guide is a book that tells you what you can and cannot serve. So if you cook something that's not in there and you don't have a CN label or a product formulation statement, we take back meals. If you don't have labels on your items that you did serve that were whole grain, yogurt, cereal, or deli meat. And then any quantities or components not listed, because that happens too, that maybe you serve spaghetti with green beans and you put green beans, but you left it blank. You didn't tell us how much you served. And then again, if you do contract meals and you don't have those delivery receipts when contracting, if you don't have that form, then we take meals back. And then this is just some additional information. COVID, meals can still be served on weekends, but this must be indicated in the application. You still, again, have to have that enrichment and educational component that's not been waived. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that you can serve meals in an area under 50% reduced right now. But again, that will be lifted. Now, I don't have any schools in here, but schools are the only ones that are allowed to do offer versus serve, so I won't talk about that. So basically what it means, what offer versus serve means, and you guys, because schools do it anyway, so the kids are used to it in a school setting. But what it means is the requirements, what the requirements are. So you have to have 5 components at lunch. They have to have all 5 at supper, and you serve supper. They have to have all 5 in the correct amount. You don't get to pick and choose. The kids don't get to pick and choose what they want. They have to take everything. So again, in the training manual, we do have blank forms, and they're in the back of the book. They start on page 161. And then in that resource library under worksheets and center forms, we have forms in there that you can use.